there's something about this particular community that draws people from wealthy backgrounds, philanthropists, who don't bring who don't bring narcissism, but rather bring this deep sense of curiosity, this deep sense of wanting to do the right thing. And it's enabled the rest of the community to thrive in just extraordinary ways. And as we're bringing in corporations and big financial institutions that see Acumen as a partner, as an equal, it feels like this world that we see through Dorcia and Sam and people coming together to bring out the best in each other is just so possible. I was recently at TED Countdown, which was a conference focused on the climate crisis. And there, board member Christina Youngberg and former board member Pat Mitchell and I were able to accompany one of our extraordinary fellows, Satya Raghu, who is from India. And like so many of our India fellows, suffered greatly during the second pandemic. In fact, he shared about the dozens of people in his close family and network of close friends who were lost to the disease, and how it took he and his partner Kaushik 5 years to bring these greenhouses in a box to smallholder farmers who scratch out a couple of dollars a day and are dealing with just extraordinary levels of climate crisis. And yet, by hanging in there for 5 years, changing his career, he said, as did Kaushik, because of the Acumen Fellowship, they built a viable business model and now have access to a $100 million revolving loan facility from a bank that wants to help them reach 500,000 smallholder farmers. And watching Satya with this deep sense of gravitas and this deep sense of purpose, supported by so many people here, including Wendy Anderson and her husband, stand on that stage through none of our connections, just getting there by himself and representing a community of people standing with him and speaking for the work that he is privileged to do for some of the poorest farmers on the world. I thought, that's who we are, and that's what the world can be. And then just yesterday, I spent about an hour and a half with Sarah Saeed Khurram from Pakistan, who always knew she wanted to do something to make change, but didn't know how. Was a doctor, and got married, had a baby, and had terrible postpartum depression. And it was that postpartum depression that catalyzed her to tell the nurse that she was working with, had been working with at a clinic when she no longer could go to the clinic, that she had to do some kind of work or she might not survive. And so they put up a little webcam and this old computer about 10 years ago, and thus started this tiny business of telemedicine in Pakistan called Sehat Honey. And during the pandemic, she made this brave and bold move, though she had very little cash in her business at that point, to agree to the government that they would make this telemedicine app free to anybody who needed it, and that she would reach out to doctors so that more and more doctors could be part of a telemedicine system that until then was really not used by very many people, frankly, in the country. And she said it was the $50,000 from Acumen given as a grant during an emergency that allowed her to ultimately pay small stipends to about 600 doctors, not just in Pakistan, but around the world. And that grant that enabled a for-profit company that was already operational allowed this release of generosity, so that when a woman in a very rural area called in the middle of the night, she actually had a Pakistani doctor in New York City answer the phone. And in talking to the woman, it was clear that the pregnant woman was going through a very dangerous pregnancy, and from New York was able to call an ambulance to take this woman from her village to a hospital to save her life. And these are the stories when Megan says, we have this 400 million number, but we actually don't know, we haven't yet unpacked it. These are the stories that when Julia talks about a gender lens and needing to think about how we measure impact are so important for what we do and what we are doing. And so even as we have this aspiration to bring electricity and light to every human being on the planet, so do we never want to forget that the kind of change that is part of this community is a change that comes in ways big and small from people who have very little resources and people who have all the resources in the world coming together because somehow we figured out that we only survive by surviving with and for each other. And I was saying to my team this last week that the last few years have been really hard for all of us, and that doesn't leave Acumen out of the equation, but that in 20 years, I have never felt so excited as I do right now about the possibilities we all have as a community to make real change in the world. And just in listening to the incredible team members and the wonderful entrepreneurs and fellows that you all have been listening to and participating with, want to first and foremost say thank you. Alex Trabulsi, you jumped in at the last minute and you were the most brilliant and eloquent MC. But every person, whether you spoke or not, made tonight possible. And just want to say thank you to the team, to every partner, to everyone who's shown up. And couldn't appreciate you more.